You are standing on a stage in the Dinner Key Auditorium in Miami. It's March 1st, 1969. The venue holds 7,000 people. There are 12,000 inside. The fire marshal has given up. The promoter oversold the show because overselling is how promoters pay rent, and the fire marshal looked at the crowd and did the math on what happens when you tell 5,000 ticket holders they can't enter, and decided that a fire code violation was less dangerous than a riot. The temperature inside is over 100 degrees. The ventilation system was designed for a seaplane hangar, not a rock concert. The audience has been waiting 2 hours. You're late. You're always late. Not because you're disorganized, though you are, but because the gap between the dressing room and the stage is the last frontier between you and the thing you've become, and every night that frontier gets harder to cross. You've been drinking bourbon since noon. Your blood alcohol level is in a range that would put a normal man on the floor. You are not a normal man. You are Jim Morrison. Your tolerance is architectural, built over 6 years of daily construction, bottle by bottle. The way a city builds a seawall against a flood it knows is coming. You take the stage. The crowd screams, not at your music, they haven't heard a note yet, at your body, at the leather pants, at the hair, at the cheekbones, at the image of you that exists independent of you, the image that Elektra Records printed on posters and that 12,000 people purchased tickets to witness in three-dimensional, breathing, sweating form. You grab the microphone, you don't sing, you talk, you ramble, you provoke, you call the audience slaves, you call them idiots, you ask them, are you going to let people push you around? How long are you going to let them push you around? The band, Ray Manzarek, Robbie Krieger, John Densmore, the 3 men who have been translating your chaos into music for 4 years, try to play. You interrupt, you stop, you start again. You tell the crowd a story about a man and a woman in a bar. The story goes nowhere. That's the point. You're testing them. You want to know if they came for the music or the spectacle. You already know the answer. What happens next is disputed. Witnesses disagree. Photographs are inconclusive. The police report says you exposed yourself on stage. You say you didn't. Your manager says you mimed it. A journalist in the 3rd row says your shirt was open but your pants stayed on. Another journalist says the pants came down. A girl in the front row says she saw everything. A security guard says he saw nothing. The truth is somewhere in the gap between 12,000 overheated, intoxicated perspectives, and that gap is exactly where you live, in the space where reality and performance are indistinguishable, and the distinction is someone else's problem. You are charged with 1 felony count of lewd and lascivious behavior, 1 misdemeanor count of indecent exposure, 1 misdemeanor count of open profanity, and 1 misdemeanor count of public drunkenness. You are the first major rock musician in American history to be arrested for a performance. The trial will last 2 years. The conviction, guilty of exposure and profanity, will carry a sentence of 6 months hard labor that you will be appealing when you die. Your name is James Douglas Morrison, IQ 149. You've read Nietzsche's The Birth of Tragedy, Rimbaud's A Season in Hell, Blake's The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, Plutarch's Lives, Artaud's The Theater and Its Double, and the complete works of the Beats, Kerouac, Ginsberg, Burroughs, before your 21st birthday. Your thesis at UCLA's film school was about the relationship between Dionysian ritual and the mass spectacle. You write poetry in notebooks that you carry everywhere, black, leather-bound, filled with handwriting so dense it looks like an EKG of a brain that won't stop firing. You wanted to be a poet, you became a poster, and for 6 years, the distance between those two things was exactly the width of a stage, a bottle, and a pair of leather pants that the industry put on you because leather photographs better than verse. Your father is Rear Admiral George Stephen Morrison, United States Navy. In August 1964, he will command the naval forces in the Gulf of Tonkin during the incident, real or fabricated. The debate persists. That gives Lyndon Johnson the congressional authorization to escalate the Vietnam War. Your father's flotilla will provide the pretext for a conflict that kills 58,220 Americans and approximately 2 million Vietnamese. He is, by any operational measure, one of the architects of the most consequential American military action of the 20th century. You never speak about him. When journalists ask about your parents, you say, "My parents are dead." They're not. Your father is alive, commanding destroyers. Your mother, Clara, is alive, writing letters you don't answer. You don't say your parents are dead because you hate them. You say it because the truth. My father is a naval admiral who helped start a war I consider an atrocity against human consciousness, requires a conversation you can't have in a magazine interview. So you replace the conversation with an epitaph. Dead parents don't require explanations. Dead parents are clean. Living parents in the Pentagon are a complication the product can't afford. You grew up on military bases. Melbourne, Florida. Albuquerque, New Mexico. Claremont, California. Alameda, California. Alexandria, Virginia. Every 2 years, a new address. Every 2 years, the new kid in a school where the other kids have known each other since kindergarten. You learn to read rooms the way your father reads tactical maps, quickly, clinically, calculating threats and escape routes. You don't make friends, you make observations. You read voraciously. By 13, you've consumed Kerouac's On the Road, which teaches you that the American highway is a spiritual corridor. By 15, Nietzsche's The Birth of Tragedy, which teaches you that civilization oscillates between the Apollonian, order, form, rationality, and the Dionysian, chaos, ecstasy, dissolution of the individual into the collective. By 17, Rimbaud's A Season in Hell, which teaches you that a poet's job is not to describe reality, but to derange the senses until reality cracks open and something truer bleeds through. Rimbaud wrote his complete works by age 21, and then quit poetry forever. He became a gun trader in Africa. The lesson you take from Rimbaud is not the poetry, it's the trajectory. Burn incandescently, then disappear. By 16, your reading list also includes Aldous Huxley's The Doors of Perception, a 63-page essay about a mescaline experience. Titled after a line from William Blake, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite." You underline that sentence. You will build an entire career inside it. Your father wants you to attend the Naval Academy in Annapolis. You enroll at Florida State, then transfer to UCLA's film school. Not to make Hollywood movies, to study the relationship between cinema, ritual, and mass consciousness. Your professors remember you as brilliant and difficult, a student who knew more about Eisenstein's montage theory than most faculty members, and who argued with anyone who tried to reduce film to entertainment. Your senior project is a film that intercuts footage of a strip club, a television set, and a Nazi rally. The thesis: spectacle is spectacle. The form doesn't change, only the content. Your father stops speaking to you around this time, or you stop speaking to him. The accounts differ, the silence doesn't. After UCLA, you drift to Venice Beach. No money, no plan. You sleep on rooftops. You take LSD, not recreationally, philosophically. You're using it the way Huxley described, as a chemical key to the doors of perception. You write constantly. Notebooks fill. The poetry is dense, imagistic, obsessed with death, the desert, snakes, lizards, the American West as a psychic landscape of infinite space and absolute violence. You're building a mythology from scratch. The desert, the serpent, the door, the other side. One day on the beach, you run into Ray Manzarek, classmate from UCLA. He asks what you've been doing. You sing him a song you wrote on the roof, Moonlight Drive. The melody is imperfect. Your voice is untrained, baritone, capable of a range that spans whisper to scream, but has no formal technique. Manzarek doesn't hear technique. He hears frequency, the thing underneath the words, the signal. He says, "Let's start a band." You say yes, not because you want to be a musician, because a band is a delivery system, a vehicle for the poetry, the ritual, the Dionysian experiment. The music is the medium, the message is the door. You name the band The Doors, the doors of perception, the door between the known and the unknown, the door between the audience and the performer, the door between the person and the product. You are the door, and doors, by definition, open in both directions. Things pass through. Not all of them come back. The Doors rehearse in the living room of a house on the beach in Venice. 4 members, no bass player. Manzarek covers the bass lines with his left hand on a Fender Rhodes keyboard bass, while playing organ with his right. It gives the band a sound that's hollow in the center, a missing frequency, an architectural absence that the listener's brain fills instinctively. The absence is the hook. The music sounds like it's missing something because it is. And the thing it's missing is safety. Your voice is the instrument you never studied. The baritone drops to a whisper when the lyric goes internal. People are strange when you're a stranger, and detonates to a howl when the ritual demands it. Break on through to the other side. You don't sing melody, you sing dynamics. The band follows you the way a bullfighter's team follows the matador, with precision, with distance, and with the understanding that the main attraction might get gored at any moment, and the show depends on it. You play the Whiskey a Go-Go on the Sunset Strip, a residency, multiple nights per week, 2 sets per night. The audience evolves, word spreads, the poet on stage who looks like a Greek sculpture, and performs like a man possessed. You close your eyes, you grip the microphone stand, you arch backward, you whisper, you scream, you recite poetry between songs, sometimes during songs, and the audience can't tell where the music ends and the literature begins, because you've designed it that way. The boundary is the product is the dissolution of the boundary. Jack Holzman, founder of Elektra Records, sees you at the Whiskey. Elektra is a folk and blues label, Judy Collins, Phil Ochs, the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. Holzman isn't looking for a rock act, He's looking for something he can't categorize. You are uncategorizable. He signs you. The first album, The Doors, 1967, recorded in 6 days. Break On Through, Soul Kitchen, The Crystal Ship, Light My Fire, 7 minutos y 6 segundos, extended by Krieger's guitar solo and Manzarek's organ solo into a psychedelic marathon that FM radio plays uncut and AM radio edits to 3 minutos. The end, 1 minutos y 41 segundos, of Oedipal theater, whispered invocations, and the most famous patricidal monologue in rock history. Father, you hear Sophocles filtered through Freud and delivered through a PA system to 3,000 people who came to dance and are instead witnessing a Greek tragedy in real time. The album sells 1 million copies. Light My Fire reaches number 1. Ed Sullivan invites you to play on national television. The producers ask you to change the line. Girl, we couldn't get much higher. The drug reference is too explicit for broadcast. You agree. On live TV, you sing the original line. The producers are furious. Sullivan's people say you'll never be invited back. You were never planning to return. Elektra looks at the sales data. They look at you, 23 years old, 6 feet tall, 145 pounds, cheekbones that cast shadows, eyes that photograph as simultaneously vacant and dangerous. They look at the poetry. They look at the IQ. They look at the reading list. They process all of this data and reach a conclusion. Sex symbol. Not poet. Not intellectual. Not Dionysian ritual artist. Sex symbol. The Jim Morrison poster, shirtless, arms spread, the young lion photograph taken by Joel Brodsky will sell more copies than any image in the history of rock merchandise. More than Elvis. More than the Beatles. Your body, frozen in a photograph, becomes the single most distributed piece of visual product in the music industry. You wanted to be Rimbaud. They made you a pinup, and the distance between those two job descriptions is the territory where you'll spend the next 4 years getting lost. The machine activates. The second album, Strange Days, in 3 months. The third, Waiting for the Sun, 7 months after that. Touring, 150 dates a year. Press, interviews where the questions are about your leather pants and the answers you want to give are about Nietzsche and the cycle of Apollonian and Dionysian cultural phases. The press prints the leather pants part. The Nietzsche part doesn't fit the column width. Your stage performance intensifies. Each concert is an experiment in controlled detonation. You don't have a set list. Or rather, the set list is a suggestion that the band follows until you deviate. And you always deviate. You extend songs. You insert poetry. You stop singing and start talking to the audience. Not between song banter, genuine psychological confrontation. What are you doing here? What do you want? Do you want to see me bleed? The audience screams yes. You understood something about mass spectacle that your UCLA thesis predicted. The audience wants transgression, but they want it performed. They want to feel danger from the safety of their seat. They want the matador to get close to the horns, but not actually get gored. Your job is to calibrate the distance, to get close enough that the audience feels the adrenaline, but far enough that nobody gets hurt. The calibration starts to slip. New Haven, Connecticut, December 9th, 1967. Before the show, you're backstage with a woman in a shower stall. A police officer finds you and maces you in the face without identifying himself or asking questions. The mace burns. The humiliation burns more. You go on stage with your eyes still stinging, and you tell the audience what happened. You describe the officer, you describe the mace, you describe the power dynamic, a man with a badge and a chemical weapon spraying a man with a guitar and a microphone. The audience boos the police. Officers in the auditorium move toward the stage. You keep talking. They cut the lights. You keep talking in the dark. They arrest you on stage, in front of 2,000 people, under lights that someone has turned back on because the arrest, like everything else in your life, becomes a performance, whether you intended it or not. First rock musician arrested on stage during a concert. The charge, breach of peace, indecent and immoral exhibition, and resisting arrest. The charges are eventually dropped. The precedent is not. From this point forward, every concert is a negotiation between what you want to do and what the police will allow, and that negotiation is visible to the audience, and the audience pays more for tickets to watch it. The drinking accelerates. Not beer, not wine, whiskey, bourbon, Southern Comfort, brandy. You drink the way other musicians practice, daily, rigorously, with a commitment to volume that suggests not recreation but research. You're not drinking to have fun, you're drinking to get somewhere. The doors of perception. Huxley used mescaline. You use alcohol because alcohol is legal, available, and doesn't require a dealer or a ritual. It just requires a bottle. And the bottle is always there, in the dressing room, on the tour bus, on the nightstand, in the studio. Manzarek sees it, Krieger sees it, Densmore sees it. They see the poet disappearing inside the product demanding more fuel than the person can provide, the bottle filling the gap between who you are and who the stage requires you to be. They talk to you, you listen, you don't stop. Not because you can't, because the distance between Jim Morrison and the Lizard King, the character you've created, the shaman, the leather god, the Dionysian priest, is widening, and the alcohol is the only bridge that still connects the two. Remove the alcohol, and the two halves separate, and separated, neither one can function. The poet can't fill a stadium. The Lizard King can't write a poem. You need both. The bottle holds them together. This is the engineering flaw the factory never addresses. The product requires the person's damage as fuel, but the damage is progressive, and there is no maintenance schedule, no recall protocol, no planned downtime. The factory runs the machine at maximum output and expects the machine to regulate itself. The machine is a 24-year-old poet, with a bottle of bourbon and an unresolved relationship with his father. The Miami incident detonates your career's structural integrity. March 1st, 1969. Dinner Key Auditorium. The show described in the cold open. Whether you exposed yourself or not, and the evidence remains genuinely ambiguous 60 years later, is irrelevant to the consequence. 26 concert dates are canceled in the aftermath. Promoters won't book you. Venues won't insure you. The FBI opens a file. Rally for Decency, a counter-event organized by a Catholic radio host, endorsed by Jackie Gleason and President Richard Nixon, draws 30,000 people to the Orange Bowl to protest obscenity in rock music. Your name is the centerpiece. You are now a liability, not to the audience. The audience has grown, because controversy is the most efficient marketing system ever invented. A liability to the infrastructure. Insurers won't cover your shows. Venues require cash bonds. The legal fees from the Miami trial drain the band's earnings. The Doors booking fee drops by 40% because the risk premium has exceeded the revenue projection. Inside the band, the fracture lines are visible. Densmore, the drummer, is furious. Not at the art, at the economics. Each canceled show is $25,000 gone. Each legal fee is another chunk of the communal earnings. Krieger writes, "Love her madly and touch me." Radio-friendly singles designed to keep the revenue flowing while you're too unstable to tour. Manzarek plays diplomat, translator between the poet and the business, the man who speaks both languages and is exhausted by the translation. You retreat, not from music, from the Lizard King. You grow a beard, you gain weight, 30 pounds, maybe more. The cheekbones disappear under a layer of bourbon and deliberate neglect. The leather pants don't fit. You start wearing loose shirts, baggy jeans. You look, intentionally, like a man who has resigned from his own image. The press responds with cruelty. Fat, washed up, bloated. They don't understand that the weight is a statement. You're trying to destroy the product's packaging. If you can make the body unrecognizable, maybe the body will stop being the product, and the poetry will finally be visible without the distraction of the cheekbones. It doesn't work. The audience wants the Lizard King. The label wants the Lizard King. America wants the Lizard King. And you're standing there with a beard and a belly, trying to read poetry about the desert and death, and the crowd is shouting, "Light my fire." You record 2 more albums. The Soft Parade, 1969, overproduced, horn sections, string arrangements, the sound of a band trying to evolve while their frontman disintegrates. Morrison Hotel, 1970, return to blues, rawer, simpler, as if the band is stripping back to essentials because the excess nearly killed them. The reviews improve, the sales hold, the system continues to function because the system always continues to function. The system doesn't need you to be healthy, the system needs you to produce. Meanwhile, you publish poetry. The Lords and the New Creatures, 1970, 2 collections in 1 volume, published by Simon & Schuster. The reviews are mixed. Some critics see genuine literary talent, compressed imagery, mythological density, a voice that owes debts to Blake and Rimbaud, but isn't derivative. Other critics see a rock star playing poet, a celebrity vanity project, the literary equivalent of a model releasing a perfume line. The second group's reviews get more attention, because rock star who thinks he's a poet is a better headline than poet who happens to be a rock star. You're asked in an interview which you consider yourself, a musician or a poet. You answer, "I think of myself as an intelligent, sensitive human with the soul of a clown which always forces me to blow it at the most important moments." It's the most honest sentence you'll ever say publicly, and nobody prints it because it doesn't fit the image, and the image is the product, and the product is all they're buying. LA Woman, the last album. Recorded in the band's rehearsal space at 85112 Santa Monica Boulevard. not a studio. A workshop. The sound is loose, electric, alive in a way the previous two albums weren't. Riders on the Storm, rain sound effects, Manzarek's electric piano, rippling like water. Your voice whispering from somewhere inside a storm that's simultaneously meteorological and psychological. LA Woman, 7 minutes of blues-driven highway music. The city as an organism, the freeway as a circulatory system, you driving through it at night with the windows down and the radio off. The recording sessions are different. You show up sober. Some days, you sing in the bathroom because the acoustics are better, and because a small enclosed space feels safer than an open studio. The band hears something they haven't heard in years. The poet. Not the Lizard King. The poet. The guy from Venice Beach who sang Moonlight Drive on the sand and meant every syllable. But the legal machinery is still grinding. The Miami appeal is pending. 6 months of hard labor if the conviction holds. Your lawyer negotiates. The judge deliberates. You are 27 years old, and facing prison for a performance that may or may not have included your genitals, in a country that sent 500,000 men to die in a war your father helped start, and is prosecuting you for obscenity. You tell the band you're leaving, not quitting, leaving, going to Paris, going to write, going to be a poet, which is what you were before the stage, and the leather, and the poster, and the Lizard King, and the Duasmil screaming people in Miami who wanted to see a man destroy himself, and got exactly what they paid for. Pamela Courson is already in Paris. Pam, your common-law wife, your cosmic mate as you call her. A redhead from Weed, California, who runs a boutique called Themis on La Cienega Boulevard, and who understands you or enables you or both, depending on which biographer you're reading. She's your constant. Not stable, not healthy, but constant. You fight operatically. You reconcile operatically. The relationship runs on the same fuel as everything else in your life. Intensity as a substitute for sustainability. You arrive in Paris in Marzo de 1971. You grow the beard fuller. You walk the streets. You visit Père Lachaise Cemetery, Oscar Wilde's grave, Chopin's grave, Balzac's grave. You sit in cafes and write in notebooks. You visit the bookstalls along the Seine. You are, for the first time in 6 years, not a product. With a notebook and a drinking problem, and the faint, diminishing hope that the poet can be extracted from the wreckage of the rock star, you write. The poetry from this period, collected posthumously, published in fragments, disputed in quality, is leaner than the earlier work, less mythological, more direct, fewer lizards, fewer deserts, more rain, more concrete, more the sound of a man who has stopped performing and started recording. You're no longer writing for Dochi Mill people. You're writing for the notebook, for the page, for the silence that a stadium never allows. But the body is failing. The drinking hasn't stopped. It has, if anything, intensified. French wine, cognac, the bottomless availability of alcohol in a culture that considers drinking a social art rather than a medical event. You cough blood. You don't see a doctor because seeing a doctor means acknowledging that the machine is breaking down. And acknowledging the breakdown means admitting that the 6 years of factory capacity operation have accumulated a debt that the body is now collecting with interest. Pam asks you to see a doctor. You don't. Manzarek calls from Los Angeles. The label wants to know about the next album. The booking agent wants to know about touring. The machine wants to know when the product will resume production. You tell Manzarek, I'm not coming back. Tell them I'm a poet. Manzarek says he understands. The label does not. The last timeline. July 2nd, 1971. Evening, you and Pam go to the movies. You see a film. The title is disputed. Some accounts say Pursued, a 1947 Robert Mitchum Western. Others say a different film, at a different theater. You feel unwell during the screening. Coughing, chest pain. You leave early, or you stay until the end. The accounts diverge. Every account of your final hours diverges, because the only witness is Pam. And Pam's testimony changes over time, and Pam will be dead of a heroin overdose 3 years later, at age 27. The same age, the same number, the cosmic joke that your mythology can't stop telling. You return to the apartment. 17 to 19, Rue Butrelius, Le Marais, 3rd floor. A rented flat with wooden floors, tall windows, a bathtub in the bathroom that's cast iron. Standard Parisian issue, deep enough to submerge a body. You eat dinner. You listen to records. You feel worse. You tell Pam you're going to take a bath. What happens in the bathroom is unknown. Pam says she went to sleep. Pam says she woke up at approximately 5 a.m. and found you in the bathtub. The water was warm or cold. The accounts differ. Your face was peaceful or contorted. The accounts differ. You were dead. No autopsy is performed. French law in 1971 does not require an autopsy when a licensed physician signs the death certificate. The physician who signs yours attributes the death to heart failure. You are 27 years old, and your heart, the organ that pumped blood through a body running on bourbon, barbiturates, cocaine, occasionally, and the metabolic demands of performing Dionysian rituals in front of thousands of people for 6 consecutive years, stopped. The conspiracy theories begin before the burial. Heroin overdose. Heroin overdose. Pam was using, and the theory suggests you snorted or ingested a quantity without realizing the purity. The French connection. Paris in 1971 is a major heroin transit point, and several people in your social circle are users. A cover-up by Pam and friends who delayed calling authorities to remove drug paraphernalia from the apartment. The CIA, because your father is an admiral, and the counterculture's most prominent voice dying quietly in a foreign bathtub is convenient for an administration at war with the counterculture. None of these theories have been proven. All of them sell books. Your death, like your life, is a renewable resource. You are buried in Père Lachaise Cemetery. Section 6, Division 6. The same cemetery you visited as a tourist 3 months earlier. Oscar Wilde is nearby. Chopin is nearby. Balzac is nearby. The poets you wanted to join. The grave becomes a pilgrimage site. Fans leave bottles of whiskey, joints, poems, graffiti. The neighboring graves are vandalized so frequently that residents petition the city to remove your remains. The city refuses. A bust of your likeness is placed on the grave. It's stolen, replaced, stolen again, replaced again. A bronze plaque is installed. It's stolen. Your grave is the most visited in Paris. More than Wilde, more than Chopin, more than Napoleon at Les Invalides. The poet wanted to be buried among poets. The product draws bigger crowds than all of them. The Doors catalog generates approximately $10 million per year in royalties and licensing. Riders on the Storm plays in car commercials. Light My Fire plays in Vietnam War montages. The End, the Oedipal psychodrama, the 11-minute Freudian exorcism, plays over the helicopter scene in Apocalypse Now, because Francis Ford Coppola understood what the audience always understood. The song is not about sex or death. It's about America consuming itself. Which is also what the Vietnam War was about, which is also what your father's Gulf of Tonkin was about, which is also what your entire life was about. And the circle closes so neatly, it almost looks designed. Oliver Stone makes a biopic in 1991. Val Kilmer plays you. The film focuses on the excess, the drinking, the nudity, the arrests, the women, the drugs. The poetry gets approximately 4 minutes of screen time. The leather pants get approximately 2 hours. The ratio is consistent with how the market has always processed you. Body first, words later, and only if there's time after the body has been sufficiently exhibited. Your poetry collections, The Lords, The New Creatures, Wilderness, The American Night, remain in print. They sell steadily. The critical reception has improved over decades, as the distance from the rock star persona allows readers to encounter the text without the poster. Some literary critics now argue that Morrison's poetry, stripped of the mythology, is a genuine, if uneven, contribution to American verse in the tradition of the Beats and the confessional poets. Others argue that the poetry is elevated by the mythology, that without the death at 27, and the grave in Paris, and the leather pants, the poems would be unremarkable. The debate is the product. The debate generates the attention generates the sales, and the sales go to an estate that distributes royalties according to contracts signed by a 23-year-old who wanted to be Rimbaud and was told to be Elvis. Here's the product specification sheet. 6 years of active production, 6 studio albums, an estimated 500 live performances, an arrest record that includes 1 felony, multiple misdemeanors, and an FBI file that classified you as a potential threat to public morality. 2 published volumes of poetry. An unfinished film, HWY, an American pastoral, that nobody distributes. A blood alcohol level that, on most performance nights, exceeded the legal limit by a factor of 3. A body that gained 30 pounds in 2 years because the man inside it was trying to make the packaging unrecognizable. A grave in Paris that attracts more visitors than the Louvre's second floor. And a question that nobody, not Elektra Records, not the critics, not the biographers, not Oliver Stone, not the 12,000 people in Miami, has ever adequately answered. What would have happened if they'd let you be a poet? Not the Lizard King, not the sex symbol, not the shirtless poster on the dormitory wall. A poet. A man with a notebook and a reading list, and an IQ of 149, and a genuine, documented, academically trained understanding of the relationship between ritual, spectacle, and the dissolution of individual consciousness into collective experience. What if the delivery system, the band, the stage, the leather, had been a vehicle for the poetry instead of a replacement for it? What if the $10 million per year in catalog royalties had funded a body of literary work instead of a mythology of self-destruction? You'll never know. The factory doesn't produce poets. The factory produces products, and the difference between a poet and a product is that a poet decides when the poem is finished. A product gets discontinued when the revenue drops. You didn't decide when to stop. The bathtub decided, or the bourbon decided, or the heart decided, or Paris decided, or the body, the same body that the factory used to sell tickets and posters and magazine covers for 6 years without once asking whether the engine could sustain the output. The body decided that the production schedule was no longer compatible with continued operation. You wanted to open the doors of perception. The industry opened the doors of monetization. You wanted Rimbaud's trajectory. Incandescence, then silence. You got the incandescence. The silence was supposed to be Paris, the notebooks, the cafes, the second act where the poet emerges from the wreckage of the rock star and begins the real work. The silence was supposed to be chosen. Instead, the silence was a bathtub at 5 a.m. in an apartment in Le Marais, and the only witness was a woman who loved you and who will follow you to the same age in the same silence 3 years later. And the poets in Père Lachaise will never know you're among them, because their graves are quiet and yours is covered in whiskey bottles and graffiti, and the footprints of tourists who came to see the rock star and will never read the poems. You are Jim Morrison, you are a poet, and they sold you as a product because the product was worth more per unit, and the unit cost, one human life, consumed at factory speed, discontinued at 27, was a line item the industry could absorb without revising the business model. The doors are closed, the poem was never finished, and the poster outsells the book, every year, by a margin that would make Rimbaud weep and Dionysus laugh, and your father, the admiral, the architect, the man you declared dead so you wouldn't have to explain, your father would understand perfectly. Because the military runs on the same math, the mission is more expensive than the man, and the man is always replaceable. You just weren't supposed to know that. If you're still here, you already know the difference between a poem and a product. The algorithm doesn't read poetry. Subscribe before it files you under merchandise.